Hello, everybody. I've been a member of California River Growers for probably 30 years or so. And after I retired in 2013, I took some training to become a master gardener. But other than that, I haven't had any training, education in propagation, anything like that. What I've learned is through meetings. One of the gurus that would come every year and give demonstrations for our chapter was Roger Meyer, who has passed away. He was both members of Orange County and in the Empire. He would come every week from Orange County out, and I learned a lot from him. We're going to talk today about propagation of fruiting plants by layering. And there are several types of layering. I'll mention talk a little bit about simple layering, tip layering, and then we'll get into air layering. You can go to the next slide, Kirk. Layering has been done for centuries in China, and it's a method that has spread across the globe and has been adapted to communities throughout the world using materials that are available. So the way we do things here is probably different than the way they do it in, say, Tanzania or other parts of the world. They have developed their own methods and use some materials to get things done. There's a lot of information on YouTube, but you can't trust everything on YouTube. Next slide, Kirk. One of the best sources that I've found for information on plant propagation is this book called The Complete Book of Plant Propagation. It's somewhat dated because the last printing was in the 1990s, but copies are still available. I saw it on Amazon the other day. So there are some good videos on YouTube, but there are some things that are not quite, that don't make sense. The next slide that we're looking at is simple layering. That is a method of bending flexible branches or stems to the ground, and you slip the branch with a knife, causing an injury to the branch where the roots are going to grow. And you anchor that into the soil. You can use that for grapes, passion fruit, other vining fruits. And you can also do it for low branches on trees that are close to the ground. Or you can take a pot of soil and put it on an elevated platform where you can bend the branch into the pot of soil. I've actually done that with grapes and attached the pot to a fence. So it works very well. You might ask, well, why would you do that with grapes when you can easily start grapes from cuttings? Well, you can make a bigger plant and have it producing a lot quicker if you do it this way. Our next slide is an example of tip layering, a natural process for some plants. This is a picture of a Chester blackberry with canes that are gone down to the ground seeking a moist soil where the tip will go into the ground and start new plants. In this next slide, you'll see how you can facilitate that yourself by taking the end of the cane and sticking it into a pot of soil, keeping it moist. And once it's rooted, you can cut the vine and you have your new plant there. So it's very easy, very simple. You don't have to have any special tools or materials to do this. And if you're doing it straight into the ground, you don't even need a pot. So it's a very easy method of layering plants. And our next slide here shows an assortment of things that you might have on hand that you can use for air layering. It's an inexpensive propagation method, and You don't need any special type of plastic bags. You can just use a piece of plastic, even a bread wrapper. And you perhaps the only other thing you might want to spend some money on is some rooting hormone. And but as you see in the picture here, I have a piece of plastic from an old bag of potting soil, duct tape. There's a clear plastic bag there, garden twist ties, a knife, and some foil. So basically, that's all I need to get started. Get ready to do my air layering. And next slide here. That's an example of what you do in terms of stripping the bark from the branch. You select the branch that you're going to air layer. Typically, it's 1/4 to 3/4 inch in diameter. Larger sizes can be done, and it's very possible depending on the type of the plant that you're dealing with. But this particular plant is a mulberry, and I do those in August. That's my own personal way of doing it. I do them in August. It's been a very successful method for me. The next picture here is the way I start out with a piece of plastic. I take a strip of duct tape and put it on one side to get ready to wrap it around the tree. And in the next picture, you'll see where I've wrapped the plastic square around the tree and taped the sides together, making a cylinder. And then the next step, you would go ahead and tie the bottom with a twist tie. And so you're making like a little pouch there. And I fill the pouch with the growing media. Sphagnum peat moss is widely used. It's very, in the past, that's the way it was taught to California red fruit growers. They would tell you use sphagnum moss, not peat moss, but I've used peat moss. But a lot of gardeners now are getting away from using peat moss, sphagnum moss, because of environmental concerns. There are alternatives that are more friendly to the environment. Cocoa mix is one alternative. In some areas where those materials are not available, they just use regular garden soil or compost, which works okay also. And the next slide here, that's just a pot of moist growing media, getting ready to fill that pouch. You want it moist, but not dripping wet. You want it moist. Once you put it into that pouch and seal it up, I found that with my mulberries, I don't have to do a thing again until several months later. In August, when I do the pouches, I walk away and don't think about them again until December. Our next slide here, that is a picture of the pouch in the tree after I've sealed it. And again, that pouch, if it's done in August, in December, it will be fully rooted. Now, a lot of these things can be grown from cuttings again, but if you're going to grow a mulberry from a cutting, it's going to be much smaller than the air layer that you're going to do, and it's going to take longer to have a producing plant. So the air layering is a lot quicker. It's easier to do, and the success rate is just as high as with cuttings, and sometimes higher than cuttings. Our next slide here shows what the pouches look like once I cut them off. On the left there, those are all mulberry air layers done in August and cut off in December. On the right side, when you unwrap them, that's what it looks like. And when you do that in December, you cut them off in December, of course, the plant is dormant. So you don't have to worry about going into shock or anything. Stick it in a pot of soil, or stick it in the ground where you want it to grow. And then your tree is ready to take off in springtime. You have new growth on it, leaves, and in some cases, fruit that the first season. Our next slide here, on the left, that's an air layer on the guava plant where I had several branches coming up from close to the ground. And it was very easy for me to air layer one of those, and I got a nice sized plant off of that in a few months. On the right-hand side, those are all mulberries, Pakistan mulberries. I've kept my tree low for almost every year. I get up there and I air layer the new growth that's come up that I would cut off anyway. So some of those branches I would prune off and discard, I've made air layer trees out of them. For the mulberries, I leave them on again from August to December. The next slide there, you see on the left, that's American persimmon. They're hard to get here in California. If you know somebody that has a tree and you want American persimmon, this particular cultivar is really good because it's seedless or nearly seedless. It very seldom produces seeds, and it's very sweet. I got it many years ago before they prohibited the shipping into California. I don't recall where I got it from, but at that time it was legal to bring them into California. I don't know of any nurseries around here locally that sell them at all. So your main source of these will be if you have a friend, California fruit growers, and you want to do an air layer on the American persimmon tree, then that's a possibility.
Larry?
Yes.
It's Christine. May I interrupt?
Yes, Christine. No, go ahead.
About
sure.
the American persimmon. We have one in our demonstration orchard at Hoopa Mountains Discovery Center, and it's doing actually quite well right now, although it didn't bear any fruit this year. That would be a good candidate.
Yeah, that's one that I donated, and that should have good fruit on it. So yeah.
Yeah, it didn't bear any fruit this year. The fuyus had a couple of fruits that I think critters have gotten to already, but
no. So I think I'll go ahead and try to air layer some of those, and if any of the members want them, then I can have them available.
Is that a possibility? We could do an air layering at our next work day. That's the fourth Saturday in September. I forget the exact date. Or should we do it sooner because we're already past August when you like to do it?
Well, with the persimmons, I'm not sure what the best time to do would be for those, because I haven't done the persimmons, but it is a possibility. They can be air layered. So I'll have to do some research of when the optimum time is for the persimmon.
Okay, we can talk later. Thank you.
Okay. On the right side there, that's a fruit from one of my seedling guavas. I have probably about 30 guava plants. Most of them are seedlings. Some of them have turned out to be very good. And that's another possibility for a good fruit producing tree like that to air layer and have those plants available. So pawpaw is another one that can be layered. There's a pawpaw group, Facebook group. I look at that every once in a while, and on there they talk about air layering. So I know a lot of folks back east have been air layering their pawpaws and sharing plants. But pawpaw is another plant that's becoming more popular here in California. I have well, actually 3 large trees that are producing. and I have 3 smaller ones. And I'll start air layering some of the better ones and try to have those available too. Our next slide here. Can you go to the next one, Kirk? Okay. This is a loquat. I have a loquat. Again, it was from a seedling. I got the initial fruit from Central Juvenile Hall when I was working there. There was a tree there in the 1970s, and the tree must have been at least 30 or 40 years old. It was a big tree and it had really good fruit. I took fruit from that, planted a seed, and we've moved twice, and I've taken seeds, and so I have about a 3rd generation seedling from that tree. It produces excellent fruit. I decided I wanted to share a plant with somebody a few years back, and I air layered a branch of that. It took really well, and I found that loquats do air layer very easily. One of the things with the way I do the air layering with the plastic from the rooting soil bags, you can't see the roots as they develop. If you use clear plastic, you can see the roots as they develop, but you don't want those roots exposed to the sun. And in order to keep the sun off the roots, you after you do the plastic layer, and then you would use a foil, sheet of foil to cover it up. Roger Meyer used to say that the birds would peck at his foil packets. So he would cover the foil with a cloth. So he would actually have the plastic bag enclosure with the growing media. And on top of that, we'd have the foil, and then on top of that, he would have a cloth. And you could take the cloth and the foil off to look at the plastic pouch every once in a while to see what's going on in there. You can see whether the roots are developing or not. Our next slide here. Some of the plants that I've tried to air layer have just not worked. I have not had any success with rose apple, or pitanga, and our black sapote. I know that some people say that it's impossible, that it's possible, but very difficult. So, but with the rose apple, I've tried 3 times and gotten nothing. So if anybody else has had success, I'd like to know how you did it. And I'd like to learn from you. Our next slide, mangoes. Air layering is not the preferred method for propagating mangoes. The main reason is the lack of a strong taproot. It's better for some plants to graft onto seedlings. And you can plant your seed, get it growing good, and then take a scion from a good fruit cultivar and graft it on. Another disadvantage to air layer trees is that with the root system not being anchored by a taproot, in some instances, and a strong wind with a larger tree, the tree will blow over. So I haven't had that problem with any of the trees that I've air layered, but Roger Meyer used to always caution us that that was a concern if you have an air layer tree and it's a larger tree without the strong root system, that it could blow over in a strong wind. Our next, why would you want to save an empty drink container? Well, you can use that for a type of air layering too. Muscadine grapes do not propagate very well from cuttings. And this is a muscadine grape that I'm propagating with a plastic juice bottle. What I did, I cut the bottom end off of the juice bottle, and I put the vine that I was going to air layering through the bottle, and you actually go ahead and do the injury to the vine like you would do with the any other layer, and then filled it up with the growing media, and put a piece of plastic sheet around the top to maintain the moisture, so I don't have to water it every day. But this is one of the preferred methods of propagating muscadine grapes, because they do not root very well from cuttings. It's almost impossible to get a cutting to grow. So there are some plants that you do it because that's the easiest method of propagation. Our next slide here. That's a pomegranate, another seedling of mine that I've named after my wife. It was a chance seedling that turned out to be a superb cultivar. And I was told that by an expert that it's much better than wonderful. So I gave it the name of my wife, Martha Gloria. I've shared cuttings with a few of our members, and I've also done some air layering on that tree. I found that pomegranates air layer very easily. And the air layers I do on the pomegranates, I usually do those during the growing season. And again, wait until the tree goes dormant, and then I cut them off. So that's basically how I do air layering. Now we can have some discussion and answer some questions. Has anybody had success with black sapotes?
You'll need to unlock your iPhone first.
We got a few questions here, Larry. I'm gonna go back through real quick.
Sure.
And then there's a question here: can you cut the branch and just stick it into the soil? So I guess a good question is what are some good species that you can just better cut from cuttings, or what are ones that are more not as advantageous for this and better for air layering? I guess is a better question.
Well, like I mentioned, a lot of plants you can propagate either air layering or by cuttings, but there are advantages or disadvantages to the air layering depending on the type of plant. In most instances, you can take a bigger branch and air layer and get a fruit producing plant much quicker than by a cutting. If you're, for instance, the pomegranate, if you're starting a pomegranate from a cutting, you usually start out with a cutting that's maybe six inches long, probably not much longer than that, because the bigger cuttings tend to dry out. Whereas if you air layer it, you can air layer a much larger cutting. Same with grapes. Grapes root very easily from cuttings. But I've taken a grapevine, 6 feet long, air layered it, and then cut it off when it's dormant, potted it up, and the next growing season I had bunches of grapes on them. So yeah, you can take some cuttings and just stick them in the ground and they'll grow. But if you want a bigger plant with producing quicker, in some instances you want to go air layering route.
Have you air layered citrus before? Any success there?
I have not. It's possible, but with the citrus greening disease, I wouldn't want to do that and share it with anybody. I have enough citrus, I don't need to make any more for myself.
Okay, and then we had one person here who tried it with citrus, but nothing grew after about 3 months. So, you have any comments or suggestions about air layering citrus?
Again, I haven't done it, but I know people who have done it, and it's a matter of if you're not using a rooting hormone, it takes longer for it to root. I know Roger Meyer used to use a dip and grow on his air layers. On my grapes and mulberries, I don't use any hormone on those at all and have close to 100% success rate. But on some plants, you might want to use the rooting hormone, and that might be the case with citrus.
Okay. How deep do you strip the branch?
You want to strip a piece of bark about a ½ inch to 1 inch, depending on the size of the branch. But just use about 1 inch all the way around. And after you take the bark off, you might want to scrape the branch a little bit too. That will encourage the rooting. And a Roger Meyer would take a pair of pliers and just turn that and clamp the pliers onto the branch and just strip the bark off with the branch, bark off with the pliers. But everybody develops their own method of doing that. Like I say, you don't need any special tools. You can use a razor blade. You can use a sharp knife, even just a kitchen knife to do that.
Okay.
Hi, Larry. Hello.
Hello,
Hi, Larry. This is Naeem. How are you?
Naeem, how are you?
Okay, I'm fine. Okay, I have one question. You know that for the air layering, you didn't mention that how much moisture we have to give into that, the pouch that we make.
If
How much
you
water? Or,
if you have a good growing media that maintains the moisture, you want to soak it. But and if with the in the past, if you're using peat moss, you would soak it so it's drenched with water, and just squeeze it out with your hand before you put it into the pouch. But again, I don't recommend using the peat moss because of environmental concerns. If you're using the cocoa mix, it has a very similar moisture ability to maintain the moisture. And once you seal that pouch, it's usually not necessary to open it again until it's fully rooted and you're ready to take it off and plant it.
okay, we can also use sterilized sawdust for for the medium.
I wouldn't use sawdust, but regular potting soil. If you have good compost, you could use that.
So how do you know that
If you have sawdust, if you incorporate it into your compost and it's well composted, you could use that.
So, but I mean, when you do the air layering, you have to cut the upper branches or just leave it as such?
You don't cut the branch off until it's rooted. And then once it's rooted and you cut it off, you may want to prune it back because it may be more than the root system can handle. So you prune some of it back.
And the air layer, when the roots come out, so where do you cut? Under the roots?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, and you have to keep that air layer into the shade, or it's okay if it has the sun?
Well, again, it's okay in the sun. If it's going to be in the sun, you want to protect the rooting, the new roots from the sun. So you would cover, if you're using clear plastic, you would cover it with foil or cloth. But if you're using the old potting soil bags, plastic like I use, then I don't cover them. I have them up in the tree, but my mulberry tree, sometimes I have 7 or 8 of them up in the top of the tree.
So you add water from time to time, or you just?
I don't. With the Pakistan mulberries, I have never added water to those, and I have a close to 100% success rate. Same with grapes. If you are doing say a subtropical plant, evergreen plant that may take longer than other plants to root, then you may have to add water. But again, with the rose apple, I've added water. I've opened up the pouch to check on development. There's nothing with the rose apple. I have no success with that. And same thing with the black sapote. Even adding water and pampering it, I haven't been able to get it to take off.
So you have to seal the pouch from the outside environment?
Well, you seal the pouch so that it's self-contained and nothing's going to get in there. It's going and the moisture is maintained within the bag.
So there's no mold growing into that, mold or some fungus or something?
No, I haven't had an issue with that at all.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You're welcome, Naeem.
Go ahead, Jane.
You sort of answered one of my questions. I have a mulberry that is huge and no, it's spread out. I was going to ask, is there a limit to the number of air layers you can put on one? I mean, it has like a fan shape, and I was could I do 12 or 15? Does it take any energy from the plant?
No, your plant will survive just fine. I've done about 8 on mine, but I could have done more. Sometimes I just get tired of doing it, and I said, well, that's enough for this year.
Okay, and do you know if pineapple guava, because there's some new varieties, do you know if they can be air layered?
I've never done it, but I believe they can be. Roger Meyer air layered a number of subtropicals. I know he air layered longuns and lychee, I believe, and guavas. The pineapple guava, the feijoa, is not a true guava, but I've air layered guavas. It's related, so I would believe it'd be fairly easy to do.
And then just as a side, rose apple, when I eat one, I put the seed in some dirt, and anybody wanted a rose apple, I've got them up. They're very easy to grow from seed,
seed, yes.
and they come true. So I would
Mhm.
just spare.
So yeah, I think I'll if I propagate any, I'll start doing it from seed and stop even trying the air layer because it just hadn't worked for me.
Christine?
Hi, yes. Hi, Larry.
Hi, Christine.
So you said that your timing from August to December, that's mostly like for mulberries, or what else is that timing? And because you
I've done
didn't
it
sound
for
like pomegranates followed that timing.
mulberries and grapes. With the pomegranates, last time I did it, I think I air layered in the spring, but I still left it on there until the plant was dormant. And I don't recall what month it was, but I left it on for several months.
So because I remember trying pomegranates and the bark did not slip off very easily, but I was doing it later, like September.
Mm-hmm.
So earlier in the spring, the bark would slip off easier.
I think so, yeah.
And is that part of the trick, is to know when the bark slips off easily and it's easy to strip it?
Not really, because some of the plants that Roger Meyer did were, it was pretty difficult to get the bark off sometimes. He would use those pliers and just go at it with the pliers. He would score the, go ahead.
Oh, he'd take pliers and like what, twist them around it to kind of
Yeah, he
get
would
the
score
bark off?
Yeah, he would score the branch all the way around, and then take the pliers and just use that to twist it and get the bark off.
Because I know I tried a macadamia and also a walnut when you did a workshop, but it was in November. So I think I started them in November and left them until about May, but they didn't seem to take.
Mm-hmm. I know macadamia is possible because Frenchie air layered some macadamias and he had success with them. I'm not sure what time of the year he did them though.
Okay, thank you.
There's a
Okay.
question Question
Okay, sorry.
here. Go ahead, Nadi.
No, okay, sorry. No, yeah, I have one question, that what is the best thickness of the branch that you can, air layer?
In most cases, you'll be working with a branch that is 3/4 to 1 inch, 3/4 inch to 1 inch.
Thickness.
It's possible to do much larger air layers, but it would take a longer amount of time. And again, it depends on what type of tree you're talking about. But
So,
just a
I mean,
rule of thumb,
if I
it's
want-
1/4 inch to 1 inch.
if I want to do the pomegranate, so what is the best size that?
If you're doing it for the first time, I would say don't go any larger than 1 inch, 3/4 to 1 inch.
Okay, so it can be lower than that, maybe like 1/2 inch.
Yes.
Okay.
And
But
if
not
you're
very
doing
thin.
if you're doing the simple layer where you're bending the branch down into a pot of soil, then it would be usually be a smaller branch.
Okay.
There's a question here, Larry. Do you have a suggestion on the best month to layer an apple tree?
I've never done apples, but apples are grown on rootstock that are resistant to disease, and you may have an issue with depending on what type of apple you're talking about. It may not grow well on its own rootstock, and it may not be resistant to some of the diseases in our soil. So, but if you're going to do an apple, I would say anytime during growing season, go ahead and try it and leave it on for several months. And again, with apples, I would wait until it's dormant to cut it off. That way you don't have to deal with the issue of shock, and your plant will be be able to adjust and grow the next season.
Okay, and if it's a Anna apple in particular, it's still a question of like the rootstock and questions of disease and that, right? Like,
Right. Uh-huh.
okay. And then just a personal question, like, would you treat most deciduous trees kind of similar as far as air layering in like August and then not cutting off until they're dormant? And then for the subtropicals, when's the time you would do that?
The subtropicals, I would think the best time would be in springtime, and just wait several months. I'm not sure, depending on what type of plant it is. Some take longer than others. So just check if you're doing the subtropicals. You may want to do the clear plastic so you can have access to a view of the roots from time to time, and decide when it's ready to be cut off.
Okay. Amy, if you want to unmute yourself so you can clarify, I think the question about the rootstocks is in particular for apples is that I think most apples, they prefer to be grafted. Most of the apples that you'll buy in a nursery are grafted apples, and they graft them onto rootstocks that are disease resistant.
Yes.
So I don't think the air layering, her question is, it would be best to do air layering with fruit trees that are not grafted onto rootstock.
There are a number of trees that grow very well on their own roots, and are commonly grown from cuttings, and with no problems with disease and other issues with the soil. But with apples, the rootstock is very easy to obtain, and it's very cheap. You can get apple rootstock for as low as $3 or $4 a plant. And then you get your scion and graft onto that. So I think that if I'm propagating apples, that would be the way I would go. For several years, the central chapter of California River Fruit Growers has had a enormous sign exchange, and usually in February. It's usually towards the end of February, and this last year, because of COVID, they didn't have it. But when they have it, the chapter there they have rootstock available for that you can graft onto apples and the other and some stone fruits. And that's the way to go, really, with those, rather than try to start them from cuttings or air layering. So the grafting is very easy for those. And again, the rootstock is easy to order online, or if any of the local chapters have the sign exchanges, sometimes they'll have the rootstock available.
Great. Yeah, a question just came in about avocados. Do you have any experience, or can avocados be air layered?
I haven't air layered avocados. I think it's possible, but again, you have the issue with rootstock, and the rootstock they use on avocados are developed for certain reasons.
Okay. Yeah, so Amy, I think you might be right, actually. So if it's a rootstock tree, maybe not air layer it. Might be a good rule of thumb.
I would think so, yeah.
All right. Yeah, I mean, that's the questions we have to. So if anyone else got more questions, feel free to type it in or unmute yourself and go for it.
I didn't mention figs. Figs are it's another tree that's easy to start from air layer. About 22 years ago, there was a young man, a member of our group. His name was Jake. At that time, he was about 19 years old, youngest member of our group. He came over one day to my house to look at my orchard, and there was a fig tree that he wanted to propagate. And he asked me, "You got a milk carton, empty milk carton, a plastic milk container?" I said, "Yeah." So I gave it to him, and he cut the milk container down the side and went ahead with propagating the fig, wrapping that split milk container around the fig branch that he wanted. And a few months later, he came back and got his fig tree. But again, you can use pretty much anything on hand to improvise and do your air layer. You don't have to go out and buy special equipment. Those clamshell things that they sell online can be quite expensive, and they're just two pieces of plastic that close together. And that's basically the concept that Jake used when he did the air layer on my fig tree with that milk container.
What would you suggest about kiwi fruit? It's a vine, so air layering or tip layering? Not tip, but
I would use the simple layer on that. I just take a branch and bend it down into a pot of soil or the ground if it's close to the ground, and propagate it that way.
So, excuse me, Larry, can you use the binding wire, the binding wire for the air layering to go?
Well, to close the pouch, I just use a regular garden twist for that. Or you can use a twine, a string to close the pouch off. But I found it easier for me just to take the garden wire and then just use that.
Okay. Okay, I have a question about banana tree. So if you can give me some information, I have planted a banana plant, and it is like 3 feet high, and it has 2-3 more branches on the sides growing up. So to bear the fruit, do I have to remove those I mean, uh, the branches growing in the side, or you leave it like that?
The banana?
Yes.
Well, you don't want to have too many pups growing on it, so you can take pups off and pot them up and or plant them somewhere else. And bananas need a lot of water and a lot of fertilizer.
Yeah.
So, and from the time you plant your banana, it takes usually about 18 months before you get fruit.
Okay. No, it's already there for like about a year.
Well, you haven't been watering and fertilizing like you should.
No, I've been watering it regularly, but what kind of fertilizer does it need?
Well, you can use compost. You
16,
can use
16?
a balanced compost, a balanced fertilizer or compost.
Mhm.
You can use composted steer manure.
Okay, and
Composted chicken manure. You have to be careful with chicken manure because it can burn it.
you know, chicken manure, I can use it in very cold weather. Can I? Like in winter, you know, when it's very cold?
Your bananas stop growing when it gets cold. So you don't need to do anything with them in the wintertime and wait until spring to start sprouting.
Oh,
Then you,
And can I also use the ammonium sulfate as fertilizer for that?
you could, but I wouldn't. I'd try to use some natural fertilizer.
Okay.
And as far as the number of pups, you want like one pup from each generation, right? So like a grandfather, a father, and a child, right?
Yeah.
Anything more than that, you can probably get rid of. Or a grandmother, mother, and daughter. I don't want to be heavy gender neutral here.
Yeah.
Okay.
While we're talking about bananas, this is Christine.
Yes.
I'm trying a method called a banana mulch circle. I've read about it in some of the permaculture websites. And what they do is have a 6-foot diameter circle that you dig in the ground about 3 feet deep. I couldn't quite dig that deep because we have rocky soil. And then you fill it with compost and mulch. And so I was filling this circle for a while with things I raked out of the goat pen and the chicken pen, and lots of cuttings and everything, and letting it, age for a few months. But then the bananas get planted on the berm that you build around the circle with all the stuff you took out of the circle. And so it's like 4 bananas around the circle. And you can also plant papayas by seed because they said papayas don't grow well being transplanted. So I just got my papayas planted now, so they haven't come up yet even. So I'm experimenting this. I'm taking pictures. I'll let people know how it works.
Bananas are very resistant. We had a member of our chapter whose house burned down over in Yorba Linda with that big fire that blew through there a few years ago. And after his house burned down, a few months later, he went back to check the lot there where his house had been. And of course, he'd lost all of his fruit trees. And the only thing that was growing were the banana plants. They came back. They survived the fire.
Okay, Larry.
That's
So one thing,
incredible.
excuse me. So how do I remove the offshoots? Like the other offshoots from the main tree, that it doesn't damage the tree, roots.
Well, you want to make sure that you get some roots with the pup when you cut it off. So you're going to cut into the main plant a little bit to do that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It'll survive. It won't hurt it.
So then once I remove them, then it won't grow any more offshoots?
Yes,
Or
but once your main plant produces, that stalk is going to die. You're going to cut that down, and you'll have the pups to replace it.
Mhm.
But if you remove a pup, it'll still produce more pups.
Yeah.
Jane, you have a question? You unmuted yourself there.
Sorry, no.
Oh, sorry guys. Yeah, what are some other things you can feed bananas? I think just food scraps under the mulch too, right? Like you don't even have to do anything special with it. So I've seen people with the banana circles, they'll just throw their food scraps into the middle, and as that breaks down, they'll feed the bananas.
I personally would not do that. I would compost the food scraps first before using them, because in order for the food scraps to break down, they're going to pull nitrogen. So I would compost them first and then put the compost on.
I was told at a lecture about a month ago that I can't say it, Solpol Mag, the combination, it's a mineral now that it's not sold by Solpol Mag anymore, but that bananas benefited from that, and you weren't wasting some of the other things, giving a balanced fertilizer all the time.
Oh, I'd like to know more about that. I haven't heard that.
Sulpomag is now sold as Langbonite.
Yes,
And
yes.
you can get it at Orange
Right.
County Farm Supply, among other places. Also, regarding the comment earlier about ammonium sulfate, yeah, you could fertilize with that, assuming that you do it in a low enough dose that you don't burn anything. But it's mostly going to promote foliage growth. And if you're trying to get your root strength up and get your plants ready for winter or for fruiting, you might need your potassium and your what's the word I want? Potassium and phosphorus and all of the trace minerals too.
Yeah.
So in the frost, we have to cover the plants, the banana trees, to protect it from the frost.
Well, it's not the frost will kill the leaves back, but it's the cold. The bananas stop growing at a certain temperature, and you're going to have cold damage on almost all bananas. There are some that are more cold resistant than others, but you're going to have cold damage. But when spring comes around, you cut off the dead leaves, and you have new ones sprouting out.
Hi, I have a question about removing the pups. So I didn't remove mine in time, and so now I have 1, 2, 3, probably 3 pups, and they're as tall as me. And then I have some smaller ones growing. Would you suggest that I remove the smaller ones, or should I cut some of the larger pups down? The mother banana is still there, and it has some bananas on it, but they're not, they're still small.
Your larger ones are probably not too large to move. You can still move those too, because we've had members of our group who have donated some really large banana plants. And so you said it's too late. It's probably not too late.
Okay.
More difficult, more labor involved.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Larry, I have one more question.
Okay.
I plant what do you call the plum tree in February, and it bear good fruit, but then its leaves started drying, and so now almost all the leaves have dried, but it is the new shoots are coming from the bottom, like new branches. and they are very fresh and very good. So what should I do? Should I let them grow?
Well, probably not. If it's a grafted tree and you have shoots coming from the ground below the graft, you're not going to have good fruit on those most likely.
Mhm.
And your main tree might have some type of fungus that's causing it to decline. Do you have any type of gummosis on it? Any oozing of sap?
No, I haven't seen anything, maybe some fungus, because initially after the fruit, its leaves started curling and started, getting brown. And then the new leaves were coming up, but now all of a sudden, all the leaves have dried. So the branches are still wet, the branches are still soft and they are not dead yet.
Well, it sounds like you probably have some type of fungus on your tree. How old is the tree?
Oh, I just planted it, I buy it from Costco, and it was, it was like a grafted
Um,
plant.
uh,
But-
Some of the California rough fruit growers up north have had problems with plum trees. And because of that, the last year they have discouraged any exchange of scions because of a fungus that they had up there. I don't know whether it's gotten down here or not, but in some areas up north, they were having problems with plum trees with pretty rapid decline on some of them, and some type of fungus. I don't recall the name of it though.
So if I sprayed with the antifungus, compound, would it help?
It might help. It might be too late though, depending on how much damage has been done to the tree.
No, only the the leaves have become brown, but the branches are still green.
Okay. Without seeing, I can't tell you, Naeem. So, but if you can send me a picture of it,
Yeah, I will send you a picture of that. Yeah.
I'll check and see what I can find out for you.
Okay. But I think there's no harm in spraying spraying it with antifungal solution.
Right.
Okay.
All right, we got any other questions? Okay, well, Larry, thanks so much as always for your knowledge.
You're
Always
welcome.
wonderful.
Okay, Larry, thank you.
You're welcome, Naeem.
It was nice talking to you and nice having some questions, answered.
Yeah, it'll be good when we can all get together again over at the center.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, no doubt. So yeah, as soon as we get word, we'll let everyone know, and as soon as we can, we'll start meeting back in person again. So hey, Lisa, now that you're on, there was a question earlier about the coffee bushes. Any updates on that?
Good evening, everyone. No, I have not received any updates. All of my correspondence is going to the crickets right now. I have not heard back from anybody. I reached out to 2 or 3 other people and I'm still not hearing anything. So I don't know if they're not getting my correspondence or what's going on, but I don't have any new information.
Okay, we'll continue to wait patiently. No big deal.
I wish this project could germinate as good as our banana plants are right now, though. There's so many of us that want coffee.
That or air layer, but yeah. Okay.
Hi, Lisa. This is Naeem. I wanted to send you the, my subscription for this year. So I need your address. If you can just text me the address and I can send you the check for that.
Oh, super. Okay. Do you mind if I just email you?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
That'd be great. Yeah.
Appreciate it.
All right. Yeah, thanks again, everyone, for joining us. We will have this posted up on the YouTube. If you're not getting our newsletters from Christine, feel free to put your email address into the chat box. We'll get you added on. Once I get it up, Christine will send out the link there. So yeah, if you guys don't have any more questions, thanks so much for your time. And Larry, thanks again so much.
Thank you.
Kurt, I have one more, sorry.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
Lisa, can we pay electronically or is it still by check?
I think she's still on here.
Yeah, sorry, you caught me emailing. No, it's still by email. I can take your credit card over the phone if you like. And we do have a square. I just have to be either in person or over the phone to get your card information.
Oh, okay. I will email you then and set up the time.
Okay.
Okay,
Alright.
so one more
Up to you.
question, Lisa. I write the check in favor of,
California Rare Fruit Growers?
okay, you have the account with this name. Okay,
Yes.
okay, great.
Thank you, Naeem.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Have a
Okay, good night.
wonderful
Thank you,
night.
Larry.
See you guys
Okay,
next
welcome.
month. Same time. First Thursday of the month, 7 p.m. We'll be right back here at this channel. So
Larry, I'll be in touch with you maybe in a few days.
Okay.
good night, guys.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Yes, good night.
Good
everyone.
night.